Alright guys, what's going on? Nitro Nick here again with another video for you guys and some more beginner quick tips on RC. So today I want to talk about some things to consider when looking for your first or potentially first RC vehicle. So the four categories that I want to go over in this video are going to be the road type, either on or off-road, the drive type, 2 or 4-wheel drive, the power type, electric or nitro, and of course size. And I'm going to only cover 8th scale, 10th scale, and 18th scale, as those are probably the most popular types out there. Alright, so the first thing to consider is road type. What do you want to be driving on? Do you want to be driving on the road, or do you want to be able to kind of go anywhere and go off-road too? Now, when I got my first RC, I had a HPI Sprint 2, and that was an on-road car. And it was a lot of fun. It was fun driving on my street, tearing it up on the pavement. But honestly, after buying that, it didn't take me too long to buy my next RC vehicle, which was off-road capable, and that was a Savage X. Now, the thing about buying your first RC vehicle is you have to get what you or what your kid really wants. And if they're really into cars, then I would suggest I would stick with the on-road and get a car for them. Definitely, coming from my own perspective, I saw the HPI Sprint 2, it looked very scale. It looked really cool, it looked really fast, it had the Subaru WRX body on there, and it just looked like a car, whereas my other option at the time was a Traxxas Rustler with the weird Dodge Dakota looking body, and it just looked out of proportion. The wheels looked huge, the body looked really small. It wasn't really my thing. I didn't really like it that much. So that's why I went with the HPI Sprint 2, because I thought it looked better. I think looks are definitely something you might have to take into consideration if it is going to be your first RC vehicle, and you obviously have to get something you like. So you have to weigh out, do you want looks or do you want more versatility? The off-road is obviously going to give you more versatility, and that's what I would suggest for a first-time RCer or someone buying for somebody else. I think off-road cars give a lot more fun, and there's a lot more to do with them. Because on-road cars, you can only drive on the street, and as we all know, that's not as fun as being able to go off some jumps and stuff like that. So that's the first thing to consider, is your road type. Alright, so now we get to talk about our second consideration, and that is going to be drive type. You can choose between 2 or 4-wheel drive for RC cars. Personally, this is going to depend on a lot about the make and model that you choose. For me, I like 4-wheel drives. Most on-road cars are all-wheel drive or 4-wheel drive. They usually use a belt system or a shaft system to split the power between both front and rear differentials. All-wheel drive cars and 4-wheel drive trucks give you much better traction and handling ability than their 2-wheel drive counterparts, and this is especially true in RC. Now in the real world, rear-wheel drive cars are still pretty comparable to 4-wheel drive cars in normal weather conditions, but in RC, since the cars are so much smaller and so much lighter, 4-wheel drive really makes the car feel much more planted to the road or whatever surface you're driving on than 2-wheel drive. 2-wheel drive cars have a high tendency to just kind of spin out, hard to get a handle on, so definitely go with the 4-wheel drive if you can afford it. They're usually a little more expensive. They are usually a little harder to maintain, or I don't want to say harder, but might be a little more difficult to maintain just because there's a few more moving parts in there. But definitely the 4-wheel drive is going to give you the traction and stability and the road-going power and feel that you're probably looking for in any RC vehicle. Alright, so the third consideration to make when looking for an RC car is going to be your power type. Do you want it to be powered by an electric motor and batteries, or do you want it to be powered by nitro and the cool sound of a nitro engine and you get all the smells and everything? Now this one is honestly, for me, pretty easy to answer. I think for the first time RC driver or someone buying for somebody else an RC car, obviously the electric cars are going to be the way to go. Electric cars are much easier to operate, they're much cleaner because they don't have fuel or a little mini engine in there or anything like that, so they're not, you don't have to worry about flammable fuel getting anywhere or anything like that, getting on you even in your eye or anything, something like that. Electric cars just kind of plug and play, literally, and I think that's really important, especially for someone just getting into the hobby. It's a lot easier to maintain and just easier to get going with Nitro requires a fuel bottle, it requires a battery to start the roto start system if it has a roto start system, and roto start basically is just a system that turns the engine over for you, so it's not a pull start, you don't have to pull it. It'll just turn the engine over for you, which is kind of nice, but again, you have to buy a battery with that anyway, so it just makes the electric cars even more of a better choice. And then Nitro also is just like, it's really loud. I would recommend against getting a Nitro for your very first RC, just because it's so much more complicated and you really don't need that. You're just looking for something to have fun with and drive around and mess around with, and I think an electric is going to be much better for you for your first time especially than a Nitro vehicle would. Once you get more experienced, maybe you've had your electric for a while or you're just looking for something different, nothing can beat the ease of use of an electric RC for someone that's just getting into the hobby. Alright, lastly, I want to talk about size between 8th scale, 10th scale, and 18th scale. So what I've found is going to be most user-friendly for someone just getting into it is probably something a bit bigger. The reason why I say that is because something bigger is easier to work on. It's easier to see how it works, it's easier to take apart, it's easier to put back together, it's easier to understand the inner workings of it, it's easier to see what's going on. Having it bigger is just easier. Now, if the bigger you get, the more room you're going to need to drive it. So 10th scale, you really can't drive in a house unless you have a giant house. 8th scale, you absolutely can't drive in the house. 18th, yeah, you totally can. You can drive it in the house. They're great for winter when maybe it's too cold out to drive your electrics or your nitros. I think a good starting point for someone just getting into the hobby would be 10th scale, 1/10th scale. And 1/10th scale is a very popular segment, a ton of RC cars. Literally, I think every type of RC car you can buy is made in a 1/10th version. So they're highly available. There's a bunch of parts for them because they're so popular. There's a bunch of hop-up parts for them because they're so popular. And they're just a good size for someone not only getting into RC or buying for someone that's into RC, but just a good size in general for really anybody. And so I have a few 1/10 scales. I had a Slash. The Slash I think is a great car. It does exactly what it's supposed to do. It's easy to work on. It's electric. It's two-wheel drive. Very simple mechanically, and it's also fun to drive. And it's 1/10 scale, and it can go over a decent amount for being its size and kind of how it is. I think if I had to pick one car, I know this video is only about tips, but if I had to pick one car that I would suggest for a first-time RC driver, first-time hobbyist, I would definitely suggest the Traxxas Slash. It's a great way to get into the hobby and offers a lot of tuning ability as well. If you're more into the racing, there's racing classes for it too. But it's just very easy to get into, a lot of fun to drive, something you can drive anywhere. It doesn't, it's an off-road truck essentially, two-wheel drive truck. It looks good because it looks scale, and what I mean by scale is it looks real. Everything looks proportional. And I think that is important. Like I said, when I bought my first car, I was looking for looks, and the HPI Sprint 2 looked proportional to me, whereas the Traxxas Rustler did not. So, you got to weigh all your options. Those are my 4 tips and kind of considerations when you're looking for either your first RC or maybe even buying for somebody else coming up this holiday season or a birthday or anything like that. Again, just to review, it's going to be what road type you want, on-road or off-road, what drive type, so two-wheel drive or four-wheel drive, what power type, electric or nitro, and of course the size, 10th scale, 8th scale, or 18th scale. Just a quick tip, the higher the number, the smaller the car. So a 1/18th is much smaller than a 1/8, and a 1/10th is kind of in the middle. It's closer to a 1/8, but kind of in the middle. A 1/24th is very small. So definitely something to, just a tidbit to know when looking for your first car. Alright guys, that's it. I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope this was at least a little bit helpful for everyone out there that's looking for their first RC or buying someone their first RC possibly as a gift. Hope I narrowed it down a little bit and give you guys something to think about when looking at your hobby store or online for that special car for you. That's it for me guys, and I'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.